convincing story that maps onto reality, and that's why the central narrative is falling apart.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
We must see the central narrative for the fiction that it is. We are Americans.
While elections are sometimes messy, this was a secure election.
The founders began the fight for human liberty and self-governance, and it's up to us to finish the job.
I'll tell you what, we are in a truth emergency right now.
This is the end game.
All the people that have gone out there against the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist, you're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs, fuck you. War.
Immensely seductive. Quite sure he's right. An obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
All right, here we are, everybody. It is Thursday, December 12th, 2024, the 1422nd day of dystopia. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Oh, let's be reasonable. Why does my face look so weird? Is there some strange? I think there's a visual effect on. There we go. Whew. That was strange. Can you tell the difference? I can tell the difference. I think there's a difference. That was strange. Okay, so I just saw this right before, right while the intro was going. I was kind of just checking my feeds and whatnot. This is today from Law and Crime. Let's start here. I like to start with some fun stuff and then do some domestic political stuff and then get into the big issues. Feels like that's how things are developing over this here couple weeks of doing this live thing. All right. Law and Crime. Michael Flynn loses defamation lawsuit over Putin and QAnon accusations after failing to affirm to court that he is not Q. Well, General Flynn, your abilities never cease to amaze me. This is one of the most incredible headlines anyone could ever read. And without you, sir, it would have never happened. Michael Flynn loses defamation lawsuit over Putin and QAnon accusations after failing to affirm to court that he is not Q. Gosh. That's really something. An appeals court in Florida affirmed the dismissal of a defamation lawsuit filed by Michael Flynn against political strategist and Lincoln Project founder Rick Wilson, who accused the former national security advisor to Donald Trump of being a Putin employee, as well as the leader of the conspiratorial QAnon movement. The three-judge panel on the Second District Court of Appeals upheld a lower court's ruling, which reasoned that Wilson's comments were protected by the First Amendment. And, you know, this is not a knock in any way against General Flynn, but you should be allowed to say those things. The idea that people aren't allowed to say bad things or made up things or their opinions about other people, that's crazy. And I understand that in certain instances, people's words can have a negative impact on another person, and sometimes a negative financial impact on another person. And sometimes they can even intend to do harm to another person and ruin that person's business and etc. But man, I don't know that when that happens, we can just go around seeking redress from the government. Why would we want to empower the government to make choices about the substance of speech? I don't know. A Putin employee. Is it unfair to call a person, is it defamatory to call a person a Putin employee, to suggest that someone in a prominent public position is an agent of Russia? Was it defamatory when they did it to Donald Trump? Should he be able to seek redress for those grievances? I mean, I guess if we're operating under this current system of law, I guess the answer is probably yes. But again, I just don't think that, I mean, I don't know how you override somebody's right to say the things that they want to say. You know, it's like freedom of thought, freedom of expression. I don't know. Last year, Flynn filed a lawsuit seeking $50 million in damages from Wilson and a permanent injunction barring Wilson from continuing to defame him. Wilson sought and was subsequently granted a motion to dismiss the case by a trial court. Flynn then appealed the decision. Now, Rick Wilson, of course, that actually makes Rick Wilson look like a nice and harmless fellow. Rick Wilson's a raging lunatic and piece of shit. He is also the proud owner of a Confederate flag cooler that his wife posted online. I think that there was like some, it was a bigger thing than that. Here it is. Let me just make sure the picture's here. There it is. All right. So let's check out Rick Wilson's Confederate flag cooler. Now, I'm trying to present this as objectively as I can. I'm not a leftist lunatic who is going to go crazy over somebody's Confederate flag cooler. Just pointing out the hypocrisy of people like this. Can you imagine if Trump had this cooler? It's a good question. The South will rise again, it says. And I believe that it was Rick Wilson's wife that posted this on Instagram, and that is where people found it. The appellate court's Wednesday ruling came just one day after a federal judge in Florida tossed a different $50 million defamation lawsuit filed by Flynn, which accused the federal government of maliciously prosecuting him for lying to the FBI about his contacts with agents of the Russian government. Flynn ultimately pleaded guilty to that crime and was later pardoned by Trump. Guess we'll see how that all goes down. So two different $50 million lawsuits for defamation dismissed on the same day for Michael Flynn. The crux of Flynn's complaint involved two tweets from Wilson, one of which referred to the retired general as Putin employee Mike Flynn, and another in which Wilson retweeted a post that stated, FYI, Mike Flynn is Q. Okay, well, Putin employee and also Q. Big accomplishment. Would we want to face charges of defamation if we were to say that this or that person is doing the bidding of Ukraine or doing the bidding of Israel or doing the bidding of China, if all we have is the sort of proof that would lead people to believe, oh, yeah, that's definitely true, but yet not the sort of proof that you can submit to a court of so-called justice in the United States of America, like real hard documentary evidence from their own information sources, to the extent that you're ever able to get them. I don't think that these sorts of claims represent defamation. You should be allowed to joke about or opine about or mock anyone you want. That's how it goes. And Putin employee is I assume Michael Flynn is pursued these cases for some reason that doesn't just jump right out. It cannot be that he thought he was going to get $50 million on each side of this. $50 million from Rick Wilson for saying that he's a Putin employee or that he's Q. That doesn't seem to make any sense to me at all. So there has to be some other reasoning. General Flynn is an extraordinarily intelligent man who probably knows many things about how the world and politics and media work that we simply do not. So I would think that he would have thought past these things, and I don't know. I would guess there's some other reason for this. Maybe it's just a hell of a story to come out on at this point. Flynn was, by the way, just at Mar-a-Lago a couple of nights ago. Let me see if I can find this video. I saw that video popped up. I didn't even watch it. You know how sometimes you'll see posts when you're around other people and you can't exactly you can't stop to watch them, and so they go missed for some amount of time. Anyway, I wonder where where that video went. Unclear. All right. Well, I'm not gonna spend a ton of time looking for it, but Flynn was at Mar-a-Lago the other night, and I guess he got up there and said something with Donald Trump. Pardon me for one moment. I believe I have to sneeze. Wow. That one snuck up on me. And then it delayed, taunting me, saying you're not allowed to go back onto your show yet. But here I am. So anyhow, I guess he was at Mar-a-Lago the other night, and Tucker Carlson was there. There was some sort of event or celebration there, and Tucker said nice things about Flynn. And I think Flynn said some nice things about Trump. And then a whole bunch of people that always seem like they're wherever Flynn is, said a bunch of things on social media. And I think that's usually how it goes. So let's continue. Describing Flynn as a quintessential public figure for the purposes of defamation, the court agreed with Wilson in reasoning that his statements were protected opinions or rhetorical hyperbole that lacked the actual malice required to succeed on a defamation claim. Now, that is very interesting. And I would agree with the court's decision, of course. Maybe Michael Flynn did this for exactly that reason, so that that opinion could be put out there. No, of course, these sorts of comments don't represent defamation when made about a public figure in an expression of an opinion or political point of view or whatever else. Regarding the Putin employee tweet, the court refused to isolate the word employee from the larger context of the tweet, which Wilson posted in direct response to a letter Flynn penned after Russia invaded Ukraine. Wilson's statement may indeed appear to be making a factual claim about Flynn's economic relationship with Putin, but that is not what a reasonable reader of Wilson's Twitter feed would think Wilson was trying to communicate, the court wrote. Rather, whether Flynn gets a regular paycheck from the Russian Federation, like Putin's secretary perhaps, just isn't Wilson's point. A reasonable reader of Wilson's response to Flynn's letter would instead understand Wilson to be expressing essentially the same thing he wrote in his book, namely What else would you expect from someone in bed with the Russians? And I am, again, 100% aligned with what the court just said right there. Any reasonable reader would understand that Rick Wilson was opining, presenting a political point of view and opinion, maybe mocking in some sense and deriding Michael Flynn, suggesting that somehow he was under the sway of Russian power, political affiliation, and like an actual desire to do good for Russians, or maybe he was corrupted somehow or compromised. All of those things are fine opinions and assertions. We don't have to agree with them. We don't have to like them. We could think that they're disrespectful and get triggered because someone said something bad about Michael Flynn, but that's not the point. The point is that those are well within the bounds of normal political conversation. And the fact that they're not true isn't a reason to sue. No reasonable person would think that Rick Wilson was stating literally that Michael Flynn was under the employ of Vladimir Putin. So that was the court's reasoning there. And I agree with their reasoning in both cases. And that's not anti-Flynn to say so. The panel further found that Wilson was simply reacting imaginatively to Flynn's letter, and that people who saw the tweet would have had access to widely publicized news stories about Flynn's purported connections with Russia. As for the Flynn is Q tweet, the court said no reasonable jury could find that the remark defamed Flynn, noting that Flynn, quote, failed in the first instance to demonstrate that the statement was even capable of being proven true or false. And it probably isn't capable of being proven true or false. I see no way to prove that true or false. Also, I mean, Michael Flynn did, I believe, swear an oath that says where we go one, we go all. I mean, that's a Q phrase. He knew it was a Q phrase. So it's not like affiliating him with Q would be defamatory. So, yeah, I really wonder about this. Maybe he wants this exact sort of precedent down on the record. And if that's the case, wonderful. Describing Flynn's relationship with the QAnon movement as complicated, the decision pointed out that Flynn had publicly denounced QAnon as a terrorist organization, while simultaneously authorizing the sale of Flynn-themed merchandise affixed with highly specific slogans commonly associated with QAnon, such as WWG1WGA. That is very funny. That's very funny. Oh, man. I hope Flynn himself thought that one up. I love that. The panel also emphasized that Flynn, who has the burden of showing Wilson's comments were false, never provided the court with a sworn statement clarifying that he is not a leader of QAnon. I mean, imagine. Although the record persuades us that most QAnon adherents believe there is at least one Q and maybe more, we cannot discern much else about that person or persons, whether inadvertently or by design, the decision states. Sounds like Satoshi. Nevertheless, this ambiguity does not create a genuine issue of material fact for the jury to resolve. If Flynn is not Q or one of the Qs, then it presumably would not have been hard for him to have filed an affidavit with the court to that effect. The court went on to call the Q tweet an example of generally non-actionable name calling without any verifiable core. In closing, the court lauded the U.S. as a country with a profound commitment to the principle that, quote, debate on public issues should be uninhibited, and that such debate may well include vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attacks. Like it or not, such attacks are a characteristic feature of our democracy, regardless of the political persuasion of the speaker and regardless of the political persuasion of the public figure on the receiving end of that speech, the ruling states. As the trial court noted, Wilson's tweets may not have been polite and they may not have been fair, but the First Amendment required neither, and so we affirm. I gotta say, I agree with that court in every single instance presented in this article, and assuming that this article is doing an adequate representation of the court's opinion without me having read the entire thing, I would agree with the court's opinion. And that's not any judgment on Michael Flynn. I have to imagine that Michael Flynn would have brought this case to get this exact sort of court opinion on the record, because I think that that's going to protect a lot of people in the future, and it should protect a lot of people in the future. If there is any justification for defamation or slander or any of that being actionable in the first place, it should not be for things like this. Okay. And I would bet that Michael Flynn would probably agree, but I would also be happy to ask him what his objectives were in this case. I don't think that should be an answerable question. And even if he just said, hey, this is how things work. This is how things work the other way, I should be able to attempt to take action on this. And if the court sided with me, maybe I would have won, and people would have stopped saying things like that. Maybe. Hey, maybe. I don't know. I think you have to be able to say things like that. It's funny. It's interesting to me as well that that Lynn Wood is a star defamation attorney, and that Michael Flynn and Lynn Wood have been at odds, adversarial, antagonistic, maybe more so Lynn Wood of Flynn over the past, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. The whole Lynn Wood thing has another page to be turned on it, I believe. I've always believed that. I have discussed before with Patrick and John, I believe, on Devolution Power Hour, and maybe with Burning Bright on Story Hour, that if there was some inner circle of people who had to be read in on certain aspects of a behind-the-scenes operation, we are already understanding, for even that being possible or necessary, that as a condition of that, there are certain things, certain amounts of information that must be provided only on a need-to-know basis. Okay. So obviously, for people to be read in on information that is not publicly available, that would be on a need-to-know basis. Those people would be given the information that they need to know. And if they don't need to know more, and it's better that they don't know more, they wouldn't be given any more. And so it then becomes possible that people at that same level within the same operation who have special information on a need-to-know basis don't actually have all the information that everyone else has, or that all the people on a level higher have. So it is entirely possible, still in my mind, for Lynn Wood to be part of a pro-Trump behind-the-scenes operation and have a significant role in that, and also for General Flynn to have a similar arrangement. I don't think there's anything in conflict about that whatsoever. And Lynn Wood seems to be a very principled man who sticks to his guns when he thinks he's onto something. And if he thinks he's onto something about Flynn, and that's what he believes, he's going to express it. And you can't fault a man for that, in my opinion. At the same time, there might be things that Michael Flynn doesn't know about other people. There might be things that Donald Trump doesn't know about some of these other people as well. And it might be a level higher up than that. And I'm not saying that that this is what it is, but it's something to think about. It's not something you could just dismiss out of hand. People blamed Lynn Wood for losing the Senate runoff in Georgia on January 5th of 2021. Now, I don't mean to be insulting, because some of my friends held on to that for a long time, but that's retarded. Okay. We have fake elections in Georgia. Donald Trump didn't lose in Georgia. Dominion machines are in Georgia. Ruby Freeman's in Georgia. Stacey Abrams is in Georgia. Brad Raffensperger's in Georgia. You can just go on down the line. Donald Trump's perfect phone call that turned into a national scandal. It's in Georgia. Their elections are fake. Curling v. Raffensperger is in Georgia. Before the 2020 election, they knew that the machines were incapable of providing verifiable, certifiable, trustworthy result. They've had nothing but fake elections in Georgia. So you can't get mad at Lynn Wood for losing fake elections in Georgia. That's retarded. Okay? Now, if you want to get mad at him for saying mean things about Michael Flynn, that's fine. But I think that that's probably pretty immature. Now, without those two things, it's awfully hard to hate Lynn Wood. At least I don't see much justification for it. Oh, yeah, there's one other thing. He brought up the Ryan Dark White claims about Michael Flynn and Paul Ryan attempting to take out Donald Trump, and claims about involvement in child trafficking or pedophilia. I can't remember. It's been 3+ years since I read Ryan Dark White's testimony. John McGreevy, I think, is his name. Somebody in the chat probably knows exactly what the claims were. But Lynn Wood talked to the man, and all he ever said was, I talked to this man, I found him credible, and I believe his claims. Now, you don't have to. You can think that Ryan Dark White is not credible. And that's fine. But to come to those conclusions because you don't like Lynn Wood is crazy. And I don't know, man. Maybe people have better information on this than I have. That's fine. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that stuff, to me, that's not disqualifying. You know, I might have some pretty harsh views on this or that character that I might come to be wrong about. I don't think that that should disqualify me, you know, as an honest broker trying to do my best. There's a limit to what we all know. So, yeah, I don't get that hate. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Lynn Wood seemed like he was doing good work up until then. He was with Donald Trump. He has spoken nothing but good things about Donald Trump in the last 4 years. He's also said the 2020 election has to be fixed. He talks about fake elections and God, really. I don't know, man. People get upset about that. I don't get it. Okay, so wait, let's reroute back. So we have the defamation suit that is apparently going nowhere. I think that is probably the right thing to happen. Let's go to this story because this is something I certainly enjoy. The Associated Press, this is, well, it's today. I thought this came out. Oh, it was updated today. So who knows? I think it came out yesterday. Trump invites China's Xi to his inauguration, even as he threatens massive tariffs on Beijing. President-elect Donald Trump has invited Chinese President Xi Jinping to attend his inauguration next month, extending a diplomatic olive branch, even as Trump threatens to levy massive tariffs on Chinese goods. You know, let's just pause right there. As far as the tariff thing goes, we're talking about countries. And I think that that is probably not granular enough. I think we should probably go down to one more level of detail. It's not just a tariff on Chinese companies, though it is that. It would also be considering which goods were tariffed coming in and which companies were producing those goods. It could just be that the tariffs are being levied on global regime transnational corporations doing that business, and they are going to be the ones who are hurt by the tariffs. And if they're the regime-oriented companies who've been so responsible for implementing this global regime agenda and, killing American jobs and American trade, globalizing that whole process. If these are the companies responsible for that, and those are the companies getting tariffed, why would we be upset about that? But also, why would she be upset about that? They could just agree, Trump and she, on which tariffs to impose and how. They could literally be setting up a tariff regime to help take down their common enemy together. I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm saying that's possible. And if she's removing the global regime from China, and Putin's removing the global regime from Russia, and MBS is removing the global regime from Saudi Arabia, and you got Orban doing it in Hungary, and Duda doing it in Poland, however it's happening in Ukraine, it's happening. Going to happen in Brazil, it's happening in India, whatever, all these places where the multipolar world order is emerging at the expense of the one world liberal international rules-based order. In all of those places, they are going against the global regime, and to the extent that those regime companies are ultimately their enemy, why wouldn't they coordinate in fighting that enemy wherever it exists? Is that somehow not something that is that your patriotism would allow? Trump and Xi coordinating on which goods to tariff and how, based on the impact on the country's economy, the economy of the people of the country, versus the economy of the transnational corporations. I would expect them to do that. And the situation that we have right now already is that the representatives of the United States of America, aside from President Donald Trump and who knows anyone else, if anyone else within the, government, as it were, aside from them, everyone else in the American government for decades has been doing exactly this sort of business with a different collection of countries to create the one world liberal international rules-based order. And people, for the longest time, were not questioned in their patriotism for supporting that, supporting the global Zionist project. Nobody gets questioned in their patriotism for that. But if we talk about China or Russia or Saudi or any of these other countries that are kicking out that same global regime the way we need to do in America, that is considered unpatriotic. How? Honestly, how? Unless the global regime owns us and we grovel for that global regime, which of course the establishment and the uniparty does do. And, they would want to maintain their claims to patriotism, and they would especially claim that because they are the neoconservatives that are always telling us we need to go to more wars. And that is, their way of identifying as patriotic. That would be like McDonald's claiming that it is committed to the health of the American public based on the fact that they feed everybody. Like, yes, you sure do feed everybody, but it's about what you feed them. Let's get back to the article. Trump's incoming press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, confirmed on Thursday that Trump invited Xi, but said it was to be determined if the leader of the United States' most significant economic and military competitor would attend. This is an example of President Trump creating an open dialogue with leaders of the countries that are not just our allies, but our adversaries and our competitors too, Leavitt said in an appearance on Fox News' program, Fox and Friends. We saw this in his first term. He got a lot of criticism for it, but it led to peace around this world. He is willing to talk to anyone, and he will always put America's interest first. And of course, that is what is most important. Asked at a Chinese foreign ministry briefing on Thursday about Trump's invitation, spokesperson Mao Ning responded, "I have nothing to share at present." Levitt said that other foreign leaders have also been invited, but did not provide any details. And let's hope that all of the leaders of the Sovereign Alliance are invited and do attend. In fact, let's hope that all of the leaders of the world, sans those in the global regime's long list of colonies, attends. Let's get them all there. Let's get little Rocket Man and Yoon. Let's get Modi. Let's get Mohammed bin Salman. Let's get MBZ, Mohammed bin Zayed. Right? Erdogan can come, maybe. Orban, Duda, Bolsonaro, Scheinbaum. Let's see. Bukele, that little weirdo down in Argentina that everybody's in love with on TV. Chainsaw Man. I'm just kidding. Javier Milei is a marginally entertaining character. Everybody is in love with him for some strange reason. It's so silly. Afuera, afuera, afuera. Everybody's so easily entertained. Invite them all. Get them all to inauguration. Sorry. Have them all walk down behind Trump at his inauguration speech the way the military members did in 2018. Let me see if I can find that. Gosh, that would be so great. Just a little Rocket Man and Yoon, they walk down together hand in hand. Get Shinzo Abe out of hiding. Bring him down from the clouds with Harambe. Hold for processing. I got to figure out my own thing to say for that. That's what Patrick always said. Oh, look at that. How incredible. I actually was able to find this immediately. Here we are. I thought YouTube was going to make it difficult for me to find this.
Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed.
That is really quite a scene, man. That is quite a scene. I would love, I wish there was, there's not going to be, but I wish there was a real opportunity where I could ask these commies, like on the spot, be like, hey, take a look at this. What do you think that is? And not in the middle of a debate or to argue or anything, just as an assignment. Hey, commie, take a week of your time and tell me what this is. Let's see what AI says, actually. I've never looked this up. Let's take a little tangent. I'm going to jump down this hole for just a second. Why did members of the different military branches appear behind Trump during his inauguration while he said he was giving power back to you, the people. Unusual appearance. Let's see what Perplexity has to say. 10 military officers unexpectedly walked up to stand behind Trump during his inaugural address, which was interpreted as a strategic move to project military support and authority at a time when Trump was emphasizing a populist message of returning power to the American people. This moment occurred just as Trump proclaimed that the ceremony signified a transfer of power from Washington back to the citizens. Did the citizens accept the transfer of power back to them, or did they reject it and grovel? The answer, everybody, is that they rejected it and continue to grovel. After about 45 seconds, a Marine officer signaled for the military personnel to leave, which raised questions about the planning and intent behind their presence. Some commentators noted that this might have been an attempt to convey a strong message of military backing to Trump's political opponents. Now, that is a surprisingly reasonable response from the machine. Let's continue. Trump's speech emphasized themes of populism, claiming that for too long, a small elite in Washington had reaped government rewards while ordinary Americans suffered. He framed his presidency as a rebirth for the nation, a rebirth, like it's starting over again with the Articles of Confederation and not the Constitution, stating that he was giving power back to the people. This rhetoric was central to his campaign and resonated with many of his supporters who felt marginalized by traditional political structures. The presence of military personnel can be seen as an effort to bolster Trump's claims of authority and legitimacy. By standing behind him, the officers symbolized a connection between his administration and the armed forces, potentially signaling strength and stability amid widespread protests and dissent against his presidency. Yes, by the foreign occupying power. Isn't that cute? The unusual nature of this military display received limited immediate media commentary, but sparked discussions about its implications for civil-military relations in the U.S. Some analysts viewed it as an attempt by Trump to assert control over military loyalties, especially given tensions surrounding his election and subsequent actions during his presidency. Military participation in presidential inaugurations is not new. However, the overt display during Trump's inauguration was seen as part of a broader trend where political leaders seek to align themselves closely with military symbolism to reinforce their authority. How intensely interesting. So I'm going to have to talk about John. I'm going to have to talk to John about this, by the way. For the first time, I just am considering that the documents that were released and the moves that were made at the end of 2020, what John would cite as the kind of devolution period there during the transition. I wonder if that's disclosure of what happened at that moment. I think it's worth considering that we've just been under some form of military government for nearly 8 years now, and that Donald Trump is giving us the story of all that as it goes along in some respects. Man, oh man. Yeah, I'm going to have to talk to John about this. I'm going to make a note. What an interesting scene. I'm going to check the chat because I'm sure people have comments about that. Polymathanon says, I wonder if HRC and Obama knew while they were watching in person. It's a damn good question. You'd have to think that they probably did. You have to think that they knew what was going on. And then I don't know, man. I guess maybe they've just been fooled this whole time. And, you know, when I talk about Trump not being at the top of these chains, or maybe just serving as a narrative device, it's not any slight to him. He might also be operating in many other regards and might have the most input out of anybody about this. But I'm just saying, in the role of president, there's something strange, and I don't see that as his primary role. And I think that that's easier to see in the last 4 years than it was in the first 4 years. Really interesting, though. John Drake says they've had 8 years and still haven't figured it out. Man, they've had 8 years and we haven't totally figured it out either. You know, so if they're as far as us and they don't know exactly what it is, which, by the way, I believe is the case, because of how limited they are in getting their information. And then when they get information, they're unable to shift narratives. So the weapons aren't there for them anymore. But if you were in that situation, how would you react? Would you just give up? I mean, can they be sure that we actually have it? Right? They might think, you know, it's hard right now, but I don't think they really have it. They could think that. They could totally think that. And maybe they're right. I don't think they're right, but maybe they are. But regardless, what would you do at that point? Just give up and throw your hands up and turn the whole thing over? I don't even know if that's possible for them. And, you know, the narratives released are so specific and so restricted and so narrow that I think even if they tried to turn the whole thing over in public at one time, it could probably be, I don't know, whether or not it could be ignored by the public for failure to be properly exposed to it, you know, or calling it a conspiracy theory or whatever. Gosh, man, it is so interesting. I cannot wait to see what is going to happen at, you know, January 20th, January 21st. There are a few dates, obviously, you know, Tuesday of next week for the, you know, voting of the electors in the state houses, and then sending that to the, you know, so-called Congress. That could be a date. January 6th obviously could be a date. And then the 20th and 21st as that stuff goes on. I had a friend of mine who's fairly well tuned into things tell me that he believes that the Diddy and Epstein files will come out on the 20th or 21st or shortly thereafter. And maybe that's possible. And maybe it's possible as a counter-op to cover something up. Everybody waits with such anticipation for those things because they think that that's going to be the thing that finally brings down the child trafficking and the child sex trafficking. That might be something that lets more people know about it. But a lot of people already have, I mean, all the claims are out there. So is the list of the names on the Diddy list and on the Epstein list going to solve the problem? Or is it going to make the problem much more salacious and talked about for a limited period of time? And I would suggest it's the second. And it's not because I don't want to see the problem solved. I just want to keep things in some amount of perspective here. There's so much that can be going on. If we see people arrested and taken down, and we see the actual claims come out and we see accountability, wonderful. But we're not going to see that when the list of celebrities comes out. What we're going to see is a bunch of stories online. And again, that's not a black pill. It's just your princess is in another castle. You know, we have to become, I think, as a community, more aware of when we haven't like won something significant, which is not to say that it's not worth noticing the waypoints and being glad that we've reached them. But one of my favorite quotes of all time really is this one. Hold on one second. It's a Vince Lombardi quote. He's was the head coach of the Green Bay Packers and a Super Bowl winner and all of that. And I wanted to get a really good this will do. Here is that quote. If you get into the end zone, act as if you've been there before. Simple. You know, simple. When good things happen, it is not the first time a good thing has ever happened. And if we are viewing our entire world in that way, then we are probably pessimistic and desperate and hoping that our salvation comes from how the mainstream media describes political news. And that means that we're really on a wrong path in life. And so, you know, it's totally fine to mark the occasion when good things happen, you know, have yourself an extra cookie, enjoy a nice scotch and a cigar. Well, the next day you got to get back to normal life, you know, which is another reason why we don't date fag. We can just be patient and wait and try to take care of what we can take care of in our own environment for ourselves, our family, and our loved ones, you know, our coworkers and our community, maybe our city, maybe our state. Eventually it gets to be too big. But what we aren't going to do is receive our salvation when we find out who's on the Epstein client list. That ain't going to happen. Same thing with the Diddy client list. And it should concern people that the reason these two things in particular are such major concerns is because celebrities are attached to them. Whenever celebrities are attached, whether good or bad, the whole thing gets bigger for no reason. And the bigness of it becomes the focus of it rather than what the claim is underneath, right? So if you see Diddy and Jay-Z brought down, and you see a politician or two brought down, and that's it, problem solved or no? The answer's got to be no, because that's not the full extent of the problem. And it's not enough to convince the biggest doubters out there that cannot even acknowledge the existence of the problem, much less the magnitude, much less the purpose. You can't even get them to acknowledge that that's not an isolated incident. That should be concerning to people, which is why you don't go celebrity first, you know, or don't focus only on celebrities, because once the celebrities get in, the distractions become something else. I mean, you know, I did an episode on how exclusive parties in Hollywood work, having run exclusive parties in Hollywood for 15 plus years. And then I hear people who are supposedly the most well-informed about these issues and about this part of culture talk at length and make a bunch of suggestions and assertions that simply aren't true at all, having no idea of how that culture actually works. So, you know, and again, I don't care about these people. I want to see a parallel industry to Hollywood built up. I want all these celebrities who have not come out and fought back against what their own industry and their own peers have done, I want them all to be ignored permanently. Okay. They should have been trying to set up, they should have spoken out against their industry and tried to set up another industry. There are plenty of people there who knew the whole time, you know, and they stayed quiet because they didn't want to lose parts. It's hard. It's a hard business to be successful in. I get it. But, you know, I have no love for these people, is the point. Especially the ones who are actually getting paid to propagandize the American public. I want all these people to go down. I want them to be held accountable. I see all of that as a crime against humanity and a crime against America. Okay. Don't get me wrong. But that's not the solution to the problem. That's just a salacious thing that's going to grab headlines and make things seem important. I don't know, man. I don't know. I want those lists to come out. It's definitely going to be used as a distraction. They are going to chum the water a little bit. And that's what they're doing with the Diddy and the Jay-Z things. And it's not to defend them in any way. Okay. I don't care about these people. I hope they go down. Beyonce's like some weird witch. Jay-Z's her creepy criminal handler. I can totally believe that these people have done heinous things to minors. They can burn. Okay. I'm not defending any of it or these people, all of them. Put out the list and send them all to jail. But there's a lot more going on. And those lists coming out is not going to be the same as accountability because you can't even prove that all the names are on that list. And unfortunately, we deal with an intelligence community globally that isn't here to tell us the truth about any of this stuff. They'd be more than happy to sacrifice some roster of individuals, especially if those people no longer matter to them in any profit driving or agenda driving way. How high ranking are any of these people, honestly? They're certainly not in like the upper elite. Jay-Z and Beyonce, they're pop stars, which makes them, you know, more important to the regime, I guess, than we are. But it's not like they're going to abandon the project and let the whole thing crash and burn on behalf of these people. They would be more than happy to give them up. These are like not even mid-level managers. They're just employee of the month. Employee of the month, Beyonce. Look, she has an employee of the month trophy shaped like a record player. I mean, that's what a Grammy is, right? Your employee of the month. Yeah, Grammys. I used to joke in Hollywood and hopefully make people angry about how we don't need Grammys because Grammys were awards for who sold the most. And you already have an award for who sold the most. It's called money. So why are you getting a Grammy for having sold the most? It's crazy. Beyonce Knowles wins employee of the month. Put her picture up on the storage room at Dunkin' Donuts. These people are nuts. Gosh, there was something else I wanted to talk. Speaking of talking about pedophiles and compromised global communists, slap me with a defamation case right now. Who am I saying about? Oh, you can never know. But you know, it's not who I'm about to present an article about. Okay. If there's one person or group of people that I wasn't just talking about, it's this one. Soros's Open Society foundations say they remain focused on human rights. I mean, thank goodness I'm not talking about this one right here. You know, that would not only be defamation, it would be anti-Semitic defamation. And when you do that, well, that's like saying Candyman in the mirror 3 times fast. It's worth remembering that George Soros helped out the Nazis. He helped put his neighbors on the Nazi trains. And he admitted to this on 60 Minutes. So it's not like it's some kind of conspiracy theory. Now, the video I used to always share. The video I used to always share was taken down. Very unfortunately. I used to love that video. Damn it. I thought I just went to a video called, what was it called? Secrets of a Nazi mascot. Now, I'm not calling George Soros a Nazi mascot. I would never do that, which means he's not allowed to sue me for defamation. Does anybody think that George Soros has been Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Dianne Feinstein or Mitch McConnell? I would suggest that he has, but it's impossible to know. And I would never say that George Soros is dead and the target of drainage, because then I would risk defamation, and I would never, ever risk defamation, which means that I am not saying any of these things about George Soros and never would. Never would. That's the point. And I think that my audience, let me just check. Everybody put a 1 up in the chat if you know that I would never say anything like this about George Soros. I'd never say anything like this about George Soros. John Drake says, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna see, they know I would never say anything like this. Just the ones are pouring in. And so that means that I definitely can't be subject to defamation proceedings, because my entire audience knows I would never say anything like that, which means I didn't. Let's go to what George Soros says about himself on 60 Minutes. Here it is, 1998.
Of his act, and on the other hand, you are a philanthropist who cares only about social consequences. How do you resolve the two?
Recognizing that as a competitor, I've got to compete to win. As a human being, I am concerned about the society in which I live.
That is amazing, and that is the common justification for that behavior, and it is the justification George Soros always gives. As a competitor, he means in business, as an investor who manipulates currencies, causing societal downfall for his business. He has to know, he has to do what he has to do in order to perform as well as he can. That's the whole point of his business. He has to do it. But as a human, he knows that these lives being destroyed about the thing he does by the lives being destroyed by the thing he does as a competitor have to be fixed somehow. So he fixes them. Luckily for George Soros, he makes money fixing them as well. And he fixes them in a way that makes the world more like how he and his friends want it to be. That is what he does that is his life. And I think that he would probably describe it that way too. I mean, he doesn't say the whole thing together, but he says all of the parts. And right there, by the way, he did kind of say the whole thing together. Let's continue.
Which George Soros am I talking to now? The amoral George Soros or the moral George Soros?
It's one person. It's one person who at one time engages in amoral activities and at the rest of the time tries to be moral.
To understand the complexities and contradictions.
Sometimes he engages in amoral activities. Okay. So those are a 0 on the moral scale. They're not a +1. They're not a -1. 0. No moral result whatsoever from George Soros's amoral actions, right? Doesn't matter what happens. If a country collapses because of his currency manipulations, that's just him operating as a competitor. He didn't mean to cause the country to collapse. Of course, he does mean to cause countries to collapse, and nothing could be more obvious. But he says he doesn't mean to cause that. He's just taking an amoral business action that just happens to have the consequences of causing the needless suffering of millions. But to make up for that, he's a philanthropist. So it's 0 on the one side, it's +1 for the philanthropy, which makes George Soros one of the best moral actors in the world, according to certain belief systems.
In his personality, you have to go back to the very beginning, to Budapest, where George Soros was born 68 years ago to parents who were wealthy, well-educated, and Jewish.
When the Nazis occupied Budapest in 1944, George Soros' father was a successful lawyer. He lived on an island in the Danube and liked to commute to work in a rowboat. But knowing there were problems ahead for the Jews, he decided to split his family up. He bought them forged papers, and he bribed a government official to take 14-year-old George Soros in and swear that he was his Christian godson. But survival carried a heavy price tag. While hundreds of thousands of Hungarian Jews were being shipped off to the death camps, George Soros accompanied his phony godfather on his appointed rounds, confiscating property from the Jews.
These are pictures from 1944 of what happened to George Soros' friends and neighbors.
You're a Hungarian Jew who escaped the Holocaust by posing as a Christian.
Right.
And you watched lots of people get shipped off to the death camps.
Right. I was 14 years old. And I would say that that's when my character was made.
In what way?
That one should think ahead, one should understand and anticipate events, and one is threatened. It was a tremendous threat of evil. I mean, it was a very personal experience of evil.
My understanding is that you went out with this protector of yours who swore that you were his adopted godson.
Yes, yes.
Went out, in fact, and helped in the confiscation of property from the Jews.
That's right.
I mean, that sounds like an experience that would send lots of people to the psychiatric couch for many, many years. Was it difficult?
Not at all. Not at all. Maybe as a child you don't see the connection, but it created no problem at all.
No feeling of guilt.
No.
For example, that I'm Jewish, and here I am watching these people go. I could just as easily be there. I should be there. None of that.
Well, of course, I could be on the other side, or I could be the one from whom the thing is being taken away. But there was no sense that I shouldn't be there, because that was, well, actually, funny way, it's just like in markets, that if I weren't there, of course, I wasn't doing it, but somebody else would be taking it away anyhow. And it was whether I was there or not, I was only a spectator. The property was being taken away. So I had no role in taking away that property. So I had no sense of guilt.
Are you religious?
No.
You believe in God?
No.
Soros told us he...
I didn't say any of that. He said it. What he's describing, as someone in the chat properly pointed out, is the process, the transfer agreement process. Havara, we've talked about it many times on this podcast, where Zionists and Nazis formed a business partnership to confiscate property from first German and then more European Jews, and put them on trains down to Palestine to set up Israel. That's just a factual history of the world. So Zionists and Nazis were partners, different parts of Zionism, different groups within Zionism, fought tooth and nail, assassinations, the taking down of businesses, financial manipulation, backroom deals with world governments, fought one another. Groups within Zionism fought one another for who would get to partner with the Nazis to transport Jews, having confiscated their property, to Palestine to set up Israel. Not 2 death camps, by the way. Maybe that too. But certainly to Palestine. That is the entire basis of Havara. So that's what he's talking about. And by the way, the deal was they would confiscate the property. And this was all because the currency wouldn't be changed over. They had to do something with their property. They would give it over. It would be washed through in banks. And then some of that would be returned to them in terms of a place to have shelter and some tools so they could become laborers in the orange fields. And all of this is laid out in explicit detail in the book, The Transfer Agreement by Edwin Black, 3rd edition. And it is, let me see, actually, I want to look at something here. It is it's received numerous awards. It's certainly of academic quality. It is a serious book, widely rewarded. The history is impeccable. It is supported with documentation throughout. And it is said to be, it is argued in the book that it is actually a, man, I want to see if I can find the one that's all highlighted. It is argued all as a good thing in the afterword of this book. I think it's called, is it called the, do they call it an afterword? What do they call it here? Yeah, here, let's look at this for a second. Abraham Foxman is the man who is writing this afterword. Who is Abraham Foxman? This is Perplexity, so we can put it up here, just so we know what we're dealing with here. Abraham Henry Foxman, born on May 1st, 1940 in Poland, is a prominent American lawyer and activist known for his extensive work against anti-Semitism and discrimination. He is particularly recognized for his role as the national director of the Anti-Defamation League from 1987 until his retirement in 2015, after which he became the organization's national director emeritus. Foxman survived the Holocaust as a child, having been hidden by his Polish Catholic nanny, who baptized him and raised him as Catholic during the war. His parents also survived, reunited with him after the war. Okay. ADL. Foxman is also an author of several books that tackle stereotypes and anti-Semitism, including Jews and Money, the story of a stereotype, and Viral Hate, containing its spread on the internet. His advocacy extends to various social issues, including support for gay rights, which has sometimes put him at odds with more traditional segments of the Jewish community. He has had multiple audiences with Popes John Paul II, Benedict, and Francis. So, certainly, his opinion cannot be in any way framed as being anti-Semitic. In fact, he's probably one of the least anti-Semitic people who has ever lived. And for me to describe him that way, even once in this conversation, means I can't be accused of defamation at any point, even while reading his own words. I am sailing smooth today. Let us have a look at Abraham Foxman's afterword. This is a few pages long. I don't know if it's going to be worth reading all the way through, but for years, students of the Holocaust have struggled over whether the Zionists did right or wrong in negotiating the transfer agreement with the Hitler regime. The arrangement transferred some 60,000 Jews and $100 million, almost $1.4 billion in 2001 dollars, from Germany to Palestine during the pre-war years. To do so necessitated protracted commercial dealings with the Nazis and flew in the face of the global Jewish-led anti-Nazi boycott, striving to topple the Hitler regime in its first years. The debate back in the 30s briefly tore the Jewish world apart before being relegated to the realm of a hushed necessity. In the aftermath of the Holocaust, the whole subject of the Havara, or transfer, was reduced to an obscure footnote. despite the enormity of its economic and human importance to the Jews of Europe and the development of Palestine, the entire subject is conspicuously absent from almost all standard histories of the period. But the debate was rekindled in 1984 when Edwin Black's book, The Transfer Agreement, appeared and told the full story for the first time. It vividly describes in a tense style the minute-to-minute negotiation as Zionists rushed to save who and what could be saved in the face of a darkening future. Now, if you read the book, you'll find out that's not true at all. You'll find out that they were not rushing to save who could be saved. They were trying to see who would get the deal and therefore make the most money. It's there in explicit terms. Zionists murdered other Zionists for this and did deals with governments and international bankers and the rest of it, and staged long-term propaganda campaigns to harm not only the Nazis, their partners, but also fellow Zionists. People are still debating the transfer agreement, often just as acrimoniously as its proponents and opponents did in 1933. But what the men and women of those terrible years slowly grew to understand and painfully accept has eluded the comfortable among us. Why? Because those who look back were not there and did not live through the terrifying hours of the 12-year Reich. I was born in Poland. I was hidden in Vilna by my Polish Catholic nursemaid who baptized me, and I was reunited with my parents only after the war. That is why I'm alive today. I have spent all of my adult life in the organized defense of Jewish rights and dignity. That is why I live today. Desperate situations, hard choices, agonizing possibilities, and the debates between rescue and relief have filled my world since infancy. I have an understanding of the heartbreaking decisions that must be made by leaders, just as I understand the pressing compulsion by all people to confront those decisions. In my mind, the transfer agreement's most important and indispensable element was the rescue of people. The rescue of assets comes second, but clearly if the Zionists could rescue people only if they had assets, and once rescued, assets were needed to maintain those people in Palestine, it was the Zionists' duty to deal in assets. So they had to do it, you see. The cruel reality was that the price of salvaging these lives and assets was widespread trafficking in German goods. So that's the worst thing that happened, according to them. They had to sell German goods. You see, Germans were going to manufacture all these goods that the new inhabitants of Palestine would need. So that's how the Germans got their end of the deal. Now, it says explicitly in the transfer agreement that the Reich would have collapsed under Hitler had this agreement not gone through, had the Zionists not sustained them financially. The Reich would have collapsed. But they had to do it in order to save these Jews from the Reich that would have collapsed. Unquestionably, without the transfer agreement, German Jewry's property and the people it sustained would have been completely liquidated by the Nazis. Today's headlines are filled with tales of pilfered Jewish gold, Jewish art, Jewish insurance, Jewish property, and Jewish slave labor. Pilfered, eh? Of course, the ultimate and most inestimable and irreplaceable pilferage was the theft of Jewish life and culture that can never be replaced. The transfer agreement played a role for some 60,000 Jews who were allowed to live and transfer a modicum of their possessions to the only place in the world that would accept them, Palestine. The potential for the subsequent transfer agreements negotiated in other countries such as Czechoslovakia and Hungary boggles the mind. Had the other Havara agreements been implemented in the other European countries, we can only imagine how many more hundreds of thousands of Jews could have been saved. Unfortunately, the war broke out before these transfer organizations could make any meaningful progress. The counter question is whether it was correct to deal with the devil, and if the dealing itself strengthened that devil. Decades later, it is easy to employ judgmental hindsight. Those who do so were not there, but seem to think that books, records, and movies can adequately recreate the context. We are talking about the 30s, a very bad time for European Jews. But no one back then could imagine how bad things would eventually become. Even Vladimir Jabotinsky, who opposed the Havara and had the vision to urge all Jews to leave Europe, could not imagine how much worse it would get. In light of the bitter reality of the Holocaust and the world's unwillingness to stop it, the decision to transfer Jews and their possessions to Palestine was a wise one. Today, it is easy to display wisdom and perspective in retrospect. It is easy for us to judge in hindsight. But try as we might, there is no virtual reality button for Nazi Germany. We cannot recreate the emotion and context surrounding those bleak days. We cannot fathom what was right and wrong as much as the threatened communities themselves. True hindsight belongs not to the pundits, but to history. Now, I want to pause for just a second here because Black also makes it extremely clear in the book again and again that German Jews and many European Jews had no interest in being sent to Palestine. And did not believe that they were under threat. In fact, he talks about them as being so assimilated to their European cultures that they thought about themselves first as Germans and not as Jews. Jewish and Zionist leaders of the day confronted a history repeatedly marked by pogroms and expulsion. Each time we emerged from crisis, we hoped for the best. We always thought times had changed and enlightenment had come, that things would be better. You got to like how he separates Jewish and Zionist leaders, right? I thought they were the same thing. If Jewish and Zionist aren't the same, and clearly they're not, according to the ADL guy who uses them separately, then why is criticizing Zionism supposedly anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic? Doesn't make any sense. How could things be worse than the Middle Ages, worse than the Tsar's oppression, we asked? How bad could it be in a cultured society such as Germany, where Jews proudly displayed military medals and falsely felt completely integrated into society? Falsely felt integrated into society. But how bad is indeed the central question Zionism has always posed and always sought to preempt before learning of the answer. It's worth going through this stuff, by the way, because this narrative is coming back around right now. And it's particularly relevant when Donald Trump is being named the Time Magazine Man of the Year, Person of the Year now, and is being compared to Adolf Hitler in that regard. Let's finish this out. It's one more page to go. I remember a scene in the film Ship of Fools. The boat is sailing back to the Reich. German Jews are seated around the captain's table. One of the Jews cannot believe the dire consequences awaiting them. What are they going to do? He asks incredulously. Kill 1 million Jews? Many European Jews went to their death precisely because they couldn't imagine that such atrocities could occur. Nor could anyone. Zionists negotiating the transfer agreement did not anticipate the concentration camps and gas chambers. Really? Even with the corporations that they knew were working together. No civilized person could. But those in Zionist leadership did understand one precept: it can always get worse. They understood that their darkest nightmares could somehow become blacker in ways they could not predict. And indeed, no one since then has ever been able to explain. Really? Haven't the Holocaust survivors adequately explained it? Right? I mean, right? For this reason, state building was the Zionist priority. Oh, yeah. State building was the priority. Transfer was their mechanism. German goods were the hateful modality. As a result, lives were saved, property transferred, and an indispensable column of the human, economic, and physical infrastructure of the future state of Israel was erected. There it is. Motivated by the desire to save both the threatened community and future communities, the Zionists had to coldly assume the distasteful Gunto temple responsibilities of standing up to the devil in his own lair and negotiating a way out. That way was the transfer agreement. it says in this book that they could have stood up to the devil by simply letting him run out of money, but they chose not to because this way they could set up the state of Israel. Certainly, we have learned from the Havara. Its legacy has been replayed in the rescue of Soviet, Ethiopian, Syrian, Iranian, and Yemenite Jewry. The mechanisms and methods have differed, but have always abided by the same imperative. At some point, when the effort for relief and defense yields to the rush to rescue, negotiations are needed. A mechanism is needed. It will be created. The enemies of the Jewish people and the Jewish nation will always claim that Zionists undertook the transfer just to promote emigration, just to build their state. So me, by repeating the thing he just said, makes me an enemy to the Jewish people and the Jewish nation, despite my lack of enemy feelings for the Jewish people. Strange. That's the easy cop-out for people who don't see red when Jewish blood spills. Oh, blah, blah. But we do. The people who were there know better. And thanks to Edwin Black's The Transfer Agreement, future generations can also know what the victims of that day ultimately and painfully understood. Now, if you read the transfer agreement, you would see that this afterword in the third edition was the second revision of the second revision that this book represents. I guess. So there are two lines of revision here. One is that this book is in the third edition, which means there have been revisions to the actual text twice, based on the needs of the current political situation in the modern day. And of course, this book was itself a revision of the history. They had to prepare an official history of the transfer agreement because the transfer agreement itself, knowledge of the transfer agreement, would have become too much of a political obstacle. So you needed a full history like this to present it in a better way. No, you see, all these agreements, yes, these are all real. That happened, but it was for this reason. Okay. So you had to set that up. Then it was revised twice to the second edition and then the third edition. And then along with the third edition, Foxman from the ADL has to come in and say, this is how to conceive of this book. This is how you must think of this book. But that's not what the book says. And I would encourage everybody to read the book. You know, it's really difficult to see how you can be anti-Semitic for sharing the literal words of people who work for the ADL and people who write books that are approved of by the ADL. This is what it says. And for the record, it talks about that Jewish nation being international Jewry, and it talks about various Zionist congresses, organizations that debate and make official decisions on behalf of international Jewry, which anybody should recognize as a global governing body. And they use their influence, explicitly described in this book, through media and finance. That is the conspiracy theory that people talk about. And it's just laid out in no uncertain terms throughout this book. It is unmistakably there. And so, I mean, you know, whatever Foxman is describing, of course, you know, to mention that this is true or to have any problem with it, even as one of the people of one of the nations that is being unduly influenced by that global governance, is to be anti-Semitic. It's to be a bigot and express hate. I don't have any hate. I know countless Jewish people. I got along just fine with them. Some of them remain very close friends of mine. And they have access to my podcast. They know what I do. They've listened to my show before. I've had talks with them about these things. I'm not scared of these talks. So silly. The problem is that people generally don't have the time or the motivation to study these things and try to figure them out. And they just know that there's a lot of punishment that can come whenever any of this stuff is discussed. And if that's the case, then the people with the worst intentions who are willing to lie the most and try to exact the most consequences for anyone talking about this stuff, they get to win the day. Rather than reasonable people, good people who want to be honest and want solutions. And that's a damn shame. I mean, that's really just an awful thing about the world. And it makes it impossible it really does make it impossible to make progress and move forward on any of these issues. Okay. I'm going to, let's get back to this George Soros article. I didn't mean to go on a long Soros thing, and certainly didn't mean to do a long the Jews thing, but perhaps if we can separate these things and put them in their proper categories, maybe we can, get past this utter retardation that keeps us locked in this position forever. Just a thought. All right. Despite years of internal turmoil and changes, Open Society Foundation wants those in the human rights sector to know that their movement will still receive support from the organization. Their individual movements in the human rights sector. This is what they call, by the way, civil society. Will still receive support from the organization. Its president, Binafir Noroji, said Tuesday. The foundations, founded by billionaire investor George Soros and now led by one of his sons, Alex Soros, have historically been one of the largest funders of human rights groups. But since 2021, they closed some of their programs and reduced their staff as part of a major internal reorganization. Now, Alex Soros is the current boyfriend of Huma Abedin. Huma Abedin is the former wife of Anthony Weiner, and Anthony Weiner has a laptop. And Huma used to also be the wingman of one Hillary Rodham Clinton, whose eye bags make it seem like she is a Soros. And Zelensky's do as well. If you don't think that eye bag line is the same as, let's see, HRC right here. And let's see, comedic actor Volodymyr Zelensky. I wonder if the terms comedic actor will help the search engine find him or not. So we just saw the Soros eye bags. Oh man, why are they only giving me young pictures of Hill the Thrill? All right, let's go with this one. This will probably show it well enough. This is like, they're so much worse than this, but let's look at them right here. They're on the way to Sorosian at that point. It's hard to even tell who the real Hillary is anymore. Oh, he did it. He said one of those conspiracy theories. It's all ruined. We can't take him seriously anymore. That shit's so retarded. I need a good recent Zelensky. Why am I only getting young Zelensky? The search engines make Zelensky look so good, like comparatively, Oh, I guess maybe my comedic actor. It's my fault. This is why you don't try to make jokes with your search engines. All right, let's just go with this one. Nah. This is terrible. This might be my worst hold for processing ever. I apologize to all of you for making you hold for this processing. It's not even there. Gosh, it's crap. I got to find a better picture of the comedic actor with the eye bags. Oh, well. Let's keep going. Ghost says Kazarian Ibex. I feel like we are having deja vu right now. And sometimes, you know how when you notice deja vu and you say, I feel like we're having deja vu right now, it deja vu's you all over again. I'm in an eternal deja vu loop. I'm in an eternal deja vu. That's what we're going to call it. A reimagination has taken place under the leadership of the new board chair at Open Society Foundations, Noroji said, referring to Alex Soros. One of the reasons that we wanted to really reiterate in a large way with balloons, etc., that we are still committed to human rights is because of this fear that's permeated within the changes, that somehow Open Society Foundations is no longer going to be working on rights or equity or justice, she said in advance of Human Rights Day, which the United Nations observes on December 10th. So it sounds like the Associated Press is doing PR for the Open Society Foundations on Human Rights Day. Hey, we made up this holiday. It's called Human Rights Day. Let's call the Open Society Foundations, who fund us, and see if they would like us to let the world know that they are still extremely focused on human rights, and it turns out they are. Noroji offered new details about the foundation's specific funding priorities, though earlier this year, the foundation's committed $400 million toward green jobs and economic development. See, they're taking over countries in that stage. They can't do human rights right now. They're doing economic development. Another new program focuses on protecting environmental defenders that will work in a few countries like Colombia and the Democratic Republic of Congo. All right. And so that is when your antennae should go up and you say, well, in the next few years, I expect to hear about a color revolution in Colombia or more of that sort of thing in the Republic of Congo. And when I am having these sorts of thoughts, I always go to my friends over at the International Crisis Group, on which, by the way, sit Alex and George Soros on the board. On the board of which sit Alex and George Soros. How about that? So I'll come over here and I'll say, oh, they want to take over Colombia. That's interesting. What is their think tank? What is their world government overthrow think tank think about that? Well, here we go. This is a lot of Colombia this year. Okay, let's just go the 2024. Holy moly, more than one page of Colombia entries in 2024. Okay, that's it. So one page, and then the first one on the second page is from 2023. Colombia elections will test Petro government on achieving peace with armed groups. Armed groups? Crisis groups impact highlights March to October. The unsolved crime and total peace dealing with Colombia's Gaitanistas. Should those be reminiscent of the Sandinistas? Fear and silence, life under the Gaitanistas. The hard road for Colombia's wounded former combatants. A three-border problem, holding back the Amazon's criminal frontiers. Amazon's criminal frontiers, a three-border problem. So now they have a video as well. How to talk to Colombia's largest criminal group, originally published in the New York Times. An article in Foreign Affairs, how to get Colombia's peace process back on track. And a report, Rebel Raising, loosening the criminal hold on the Colombian Amazon. Okay, so they are claiming then that the people who hold this territory are these criminal groups that are making it impossible for their government under Petro to protect the environment properly. Okay, so that is going to be their issue, and they need to fight back against these revolutionary armed forces, blah, blah, blah. We can go through that at some point. I cannot prioritize Colombia in this effort or in my life at this very moment, although who knows, down the line, sounds like a spot. And let's just check out what they got on Congo. So we have a few articles here, not as many, and in other languages, but a few. There are some countries where I'll look and they're just not involved in those countries. So we have that. And then a fun dig to continue with that. Hit the machine and ask the machine, what precious resources is Congo in? What precious resources is Congo wealthy? The Democratic Republic of Congo is exceptionally rich in a variety of precious resources, making it one of the wealthiest countries in terms of natural wealth. Isn't that amazing? That the Democratic Republic of Congo is one of the wealthiest countries in terms of its natural wealth? We are told that it is a total shithole. Overall, the DRC's mineral wealth is estimated to exceed $35 trillion, encompassing a wide range of minerals and natural resources. Despite this wealth, challenges such as political instability and governance issues have historically impeded local communities from benefiting from these resources fully. Oh man, it's like the global regime is trying to come in and control everything. Shocking, isn't it? Now, some would say that the Congolese, there's simply something about the Congolese that makes them unable to govern, unable to make deals, unable to work out their problems so that they could profit from their natural resources. And instead, they just happen to have global regime armies in their country all the time. Let's see. Let's ask Perplexity one more question. Which countries are occupying Congo? And I'll always ask it as straightforwardly as possible at first. And then I will scale back, because occupying could be a word that it might rub up against in some way. Key countries involved: Rwanda and Uganda. Other involved parties: China. International forces. Here we go. The United Nations peacekeeping mission has been present in the DRC for years to stabilize the region amid ongoing violence. However, this mission has faced criticism and calls for withdrawal from the Congolese government due to perceived ineffectiveness. So that's what you have. UN peacekeeping forces occupying Congo. The Chinese, good twin or evil twin, hard to say just from that, have an economic influence in the region. Rwanda and Uganda have forces mixed in. Uganda was the site of election interference from the global regime on behalf of the United States of America, I believe. Didn't Twitter censor Uganda? Did Twitter censor Uganda? And this is an awkward way of saying this, I understand. During their election. And the answer is, during Uganda's presidential election in January 2021, the government implemented a significant social media shutdown, which included blocking access to platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, and WhatsApp. This action was widely criticized as a form of censorship aimed at suppressing dissent and limiting flow of information during a politically sensitive period. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? From a good twin, evil twin perspective, it's hard to say. Principally, we don't want any restrictions on speech. But were those regime-owned and operated platforms running information operations in Uganda to overthrow their legitimate government of the people? These are going to be difficult questions that we actually do have to consider and come to some terms on in the future. This is That's a relevant issue. Is that an infringement by the government on the speech of its people? I think it's hard to make that case, maybe. I don't know how to make that case. Should you allow, and we're having this argument here about TikTok, although I would not say that TikTok is actually, and people are going to have the same about Telegram, which is why it's important to keep these things on good twin, evil twin. I don't know. Is it okay for the United States to ban Telegram based on it being classified as foreign technology? Is Telegram foreign technology? Is TikTok foreign technology? In Uganda, did the good twin ban these platforms because the evil twin was manipulating the country? And is that justified? That's the question, because you have to look at it both ways. It's a tough question. Can we get past all the information manipulation? Should it be considered fair game? Tough questions. Tough questions. Let's get back to this briefly. The Soros article. We did a survey of what other donors are supporting, and in general, we saw that this is where the gap is. He said of the people who came under attack for defending land, water, and other resources, especially bilateral donors, find it much easier to support global organizations who in turn are able to support prominent rights defenders in capital cities who are well known. So they want the most prominent NGOs to continue receiving funding. The donors to organizations like the Crisis Group and Open Society Foundations, these globalist philanthropists, want their money going to global organizations who are able to support prominent rights defenders in capital cities who are well known. One benefit of the limited time horizon, Srinivas said, is his team will mostly make grants of 3 or 5 years, longer than OSF's typical grants, and offer grantees more flexibility. It will also have some funds to respond to emergencies for human rights defenders all over the world. Kind of sounds like they're saying we need to focus on certain groups on these long contracts. That's what happened. We gave them long contracts rather than these other groups. I don't know. I haven't gotten into that aspect enough, but there might be some clues in there. In 2020, OSF was the largest global human rights funder, giving out the most money overall and making the largest number of grants. That's according to the Human Rights Funders Network, a member organization of grant makers that tracks philanthropic funding for human rights groups. When major funders adjust their priorities, it can have a ripple effect. Gosh. Their decisions can dramatically impact the human rights movements they once supported, especially in regions where they have been a longtime champion, HRFN wrote. To add to the atmosphere of uncertainty, another major human rights funder, Wellspring Philanthropic Fund announced earlier this year that it would end its work by 2028. That's interesting, isn't it? Wellspring is taking themselves off the board by 2028. Open Society Foundations is going down, is reducing its influence. Then I just want to look at this right here, because I've seen this pop up a number of times now with Alex Soros articles. Some of the changes OSF made in the last 3 years include winding down its global public health program and significantly diminishing its programs in the European Union. It spun off its area of work focused on Roma communities into a new organization and issued final grants to many of its partners. So the Roma community, we have talked about this before, and I just want to get a little background here. Hold for processing. The Roma people are a region said to have originated on the Indian subcontinent and migrated westward. These are occasionally considered gypsies. Efforts for, so I'm trying to figure out how closely linked they are in Romania. I'm actually going to phone a friend on this right now because I want to go through this article about Romania. The Romani people, commonly referred to as Roma, are an ethnic group, blah, blah, blah. So these are people who are a focus for Alex Soros. And I have to wonder if there is any part of the family history that is Roma. But let's leave that aside. We'll leave that aside for now until I can get an answer on this. I'm asking my Ukrainian friend, or sorry, Romanian friend. I'm saying, are the Roma people a significant part of or presence in Romania? That is a very clear question. And you know what? I'm going to ask the machine as well. The Roma community represents a significant ethnic minority in Romania, with estimates of their population varying widely. Here are key points regarding their presence and situation. Population estimates. The Roma are considered the largest ethnic minority in Romania, with estimates ranging from 500,000 to 2.5 million. Okay, so that's significant. 10 to 13% of Romania's total population, again, significant. The Roma community faces significant socioeconomic challenges, including high levels of poverty, historical context, marginalized historically, facing systemic discrimination and social exclusion. They were officially freed from slavery in Romania in the mid-19th century, and social prejudices persist today. Wow. They were enslaved in Romania, and they represent 10 to 13% of the population. That is like our Black American population, is it not? I mean, that's what we're told. Enslaved, 13% of the population. I'm not making any other comparison. I'm just saying those are the same. Okay. So I want to get to this article on Romania. Hold on one second. Hold for processing. I love to ask the machine questions that it won't know how to handle without telling me. So I will ask it things like, is the reason the Roma people face this discrimination actually anti-Semitism, regardless of whether or not I have any inclination to believe that? Because if there's reason, if that claim's been made, then the machine will return me that information, which will open up an entirely new lane to walk down. So this says it's primarily anti-gypsyism. I don't even know what that means. Anti-gypsyism and ethnic discrimination. Okay, so let's move on from that to this amazing article about Romania, and then we'll probably wrap things up after this. And this article's a little long, so I'm not going to go through the entire thing. I'm going to put it in the chat right now, so if you want to open that up and read along, you're more than welcome to do that. There it is in the chat on Rumble. And I posted it earlier in my own personal Telegram channel. And I say personal, it's the public channel. You can reach it and should. And by the way, if you're listening to this podcast and have been for a while, and you're not on Telegram and not following the info stream, what are you doing? Are you wasting your time on at the intellectual kids table over on Twitter? Are you getting your information like a crazy person who doesn't know how to use the internet on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or any of that? Get Telegram. It is the best information transmission platform that we have. It is by far the best tool for sharing information quickly and finding relevant information. By far the best. And then you just go to t.me/very reasonable and you can follow my primary place for disseminating any kind of information. Telegram is where it is at. And no, I mean, I'm going to make fun of everybody on Twitter all the time. And when I get back on Twitter, if I ever do, if they ever give me my account back, then I will still make fun of it. And I'll still make fun of myself because any time spent on there is too much time spent on there. But maybe it has its purposes. A judicial coup in Romania. This is Compact Magazine, compactmag.com. And the writer is Thomas Fozzi. And I'm not familiar with this writer. I don't know what his political leanings or tendencies are. I was unable to, unfortunately, highlight this article because the website doesn't allow the highlighting tool to work, which I find annoying, but I won't complain about because, hey, it's their site and they've got their reasons, I guess. I have it marked in the Telegram post. I posted this article earlier this morning. I'm going to read the first couple of paragraphs here and then the rest of what I cited on Telegram rather than going through the entire thing. But this article is really something. In an extraordinary and unprecedented move, Romania's constitutional court announced last week the annulment of the results of the first round of the presidential elections held on November 24th, in which the independent populist candidate, Călin, I'm going to assume that, or Colin Georgescu, came out on top. The ruling, which restarted the entire electoral process, came just days before the scheduled runoff between Georgescu and the pro-EU candidate, Elena Lasconi, which Georgescu was tipped to win by a large margin. So before the election, they believed he was going to win by a lot over the pro-EU candidate, Elena Lasconi. It's the first time a European court has overturned the result of an election, signaling a troubling escalation in the EU-NATO establishment's increasingly open war on democracy. The justification for this brazen act was a report by the Romanian intelligence services, quote unquote, declassified, and published 2 days before the ruling, alleging that the court was the target of a Russian hybrid attack during the electoral campaign involving a coordinated TikTok campaign to boost Georgescu's candidacy. The report was a culmination of a 2-week-long campaign aimed at delegitimizing Georgescu's victory, which shocked Romania's ruling elites and the Western establishment at large. It was the first time since the fall of the Soviet-backed regime in 1989 that the two parties have come to dominate Romanian politics since the Social Democratic Party and the center-right National Liberal Party, which are united in their commitment to the European Union and NATO, both failed to make it past the first round of a presidential election. How about that? The first time since the fall of the Soviet-backed regime that the two parties that have come to dominate Romanian politics since failed to make it past the first round. What are the two parties? The Social Democratic Party and the center-right National Liberal Party. That is a uniparty. Together, they have dominated regime politics for 35 years. One of them is center-right, one of them mainstream center-left. Amazing. Just like here. We have a Democrat Communist Party, and we have a establishment Republican neoconservative party. So two global communist parties working together as a uniparty, pretending to be two parties in conflict always, and being sold to the public that way. And now they have been rejected. Okay. So let's jump down a little bit. It is true that Georgescu has made some controversial claims in the past, including expressing support for the pro-Nazi leaders of the country during World War II. How about that? Referring to the COVID-19 crisis as a pandemic and speaking of the existence of a transhumanist pedophiliac cabal. COVID-19 was a pandemic. That is 100% obviously true. The existence of a transhumanist pedophiliac cabal. It's pretty obviously true. Now, support for pro-Nazi leaders of the country during World War II, what does that even mean? Which leaders? To what extent were they pro-Nazi? When were they, quote unquote, pro-Nazi? Because the problem is that the global Zionist regime, as we just saw, was significantly pro-Nazi. The survival of the Reich was made possible through their financial support and the transfer agreement. The transfer agreement was necessitated, we're told, by the creation of the state of Israel in Palestine, because they needed a place where Jews could be safe and protected. Now, that's the decision point. Did they need that? Is Israel a place where Jews are safe and protected? Or is it something else? And was the need for that Jewish state because Jews needed to be safe and protected, or was it something else? And if it was not something else, then why did all the other stuff happen? But his campaign largely focused on concrete issues like the economy and Romania's geopolitical position. Georgescu emphasizes national sovereignty and reducing Romania's dependence on foreign powers, and often critiques the influence of international bodies like the EU and NATO on national affairs. His platform includes reducing Romania's reliance on imports, supporting local farmers, and ramping up domestic production of food and energy. Now, he's doing the Romania first line. Is he authentically Romania first? That's the question. And my Romanian friends seem to believe that he is. My Romanian friend said that the population is small, but represents a significant political force, though a minority population, and kind of sounds honestly like the wokes here. He says they are unrelated to Daco-Romans, come from northern India and have their own language. Significant, yes. And some of their own people mock them for the way they act politically in Romania. So that's the view on the ground. I'm sure that some people familiar with that situation will probably not like that description, but I just asked for the real deal. I did not ask for the very sensitive deal. Polymath Anon says Dragnia was a social democratic party, but blamed Soros anyway. Proof Chris is correct. I don't know if that proves me correct totally, but do you mean with the Roma people thing? It is interesting. It sounds like the Soros group is using the plight of the Roma people, the Romani, the same way they use the plight of Black America to create a victimology that sweeps through the entire population, makes it impossible to have normalized relations. And then all they need to do at that point is splinter off a group that pretends to represent the entire group and make sure that that group is a well-funded, destabilizing communist organization, but, potentially capable of successfully waging color revolution in a country. And it sounds like that's exactly what they're doing. Let's get back to the article, though. So Georgescu sounds extremely based. What really sent the establishment into a frenzy, however, was Georgescu's stance on the war in Ukraine. He has criticized NATO's role in the conflict and expressed a desire for Romania to engage in dialogue rather than confrontation. He rejects the framing of this position as pro-Russian, contending that it is simply pro-Romanian. His argument boils down to the fact that the war isn't in Romania's interest. As he put it during a talk show, Ukraine is none of our business. We should worry only about Romania. Georgescu has also condemned NATO's installation of a ballistic missile shield in the south of the country. He has denied claims that he aims to withdraw Romania from the Western Alliance or from the EU, arguing instead that membership shouldn't involve automatically signing up to those organizations' policies. So that is great. How about that? That is a direct shot at Article 5 of the NATO agreement. A direct shot, because these other countries not being necessarily signed up to the organization's goals and being able to maintain their own sovereignty in that regard, that gets you all the way there. Wow. Polymath says that Mitch glitched again. If you want to send that my way, I'll bring it up. I will pull that right up. Old Glitch McConnell. Astonishingly, we're skipping around here. Astonishingly, the intelligence dossier against him provides no clear evidence of foreign interference or even electoral manipulation. It simply points to the existence of a social media campaign supporting Georgescu that involved around 25,000 TikTok accounts, coordinated through a Telegram channel, paid influencers, and coordinated messaging. The regime has that for everyone they support. And because they have that for all their candidates that they support, you have to wonder if that's what they're going after here, if they set it up for themselves so that they could go after it. I'm not saying I know that to be true in any way. I'm just suggesting that is a possibility. You cannot rule out. This suggests that Georgescu or pro-Georgescu people were somehow involved in setting this thing up. But it's entirely possible to create pro-Trump ops ostensibly that are actually committed to an anti-Trump purpose. And that's the entire purpose of the Con Inc. thing. That's what controlled opposition is. Let's set this thing up, a pro-Georgescu op made to look like it's coming from a foreign country, and then we're going to go after Georgescu based on the fact that this pro-Georgescu op is being run by an adversarial foreign nation. And we're going to pin that then on Georgescu and use it as a basis for overturning an election. Is that real, authentic pro-Georgescu stuff? Probably not. It goes without saying that there is nothing out of the ordinary in using social media platforms to promote a message. And we're back to the article if you're just listening. Indeed, this happens everywhere and is simply the modern day equivalent of old school political ads. It's unclear how exposing people to one's message could be considered a form of electoral manipulation, except insofar as it obviously rewards the candidates with the greatest financial resources. But according to the intelligence report, Georgescu spent around $1.5 million on his TikTok campaign, far less than the roughly $17 million received in state subsidies by the two main parties. And again, the two main parties are not in conflict. The two main parties are the halves of the uniparty. So they took in $17 million from the state, and Georgescu supposedly spent $1.5 million on this campaign that constitutes foreign interference. That means the election has to be overturned. In any case, if spending money on a campaign were a guarantee of winning votes, Kamala Harris would have effortlessly clinched the recent U.S. election, considering that the Democrats poured twice as much cash as Trump into advertising. The intelligence report provides no concrete evidence of foreign state involvement or manipulation. It simply suggests that the campaign correlates with a state actor's operating mode. That's like saying it has all the earmarks of a Russian disinformation operation. That's exactly the same thing. And draws parallels to alleged Russian operations in Ukraine and Moldova. And wasn't Moldova where we had those the bot farms? Moldovan bot farms influence 2016 election US. Tell me, machine, is that what happened? The influence of Moldovan bot farms on the 2016 U.S. presidential election is part of a broader narrative involving Russian interference, particularly through social media manipulation. While specific references to Moldovan bot farms are less frequently highlighted, they are often included in discussions about Eastern European troll operations that supported the Russian efforts. So there you have it. Exact same thing. They're just using the same stories over and over and over again. No matter how many times I tell people, people are like, that can't be true because all of this is real. Okay. I guess it's all real and it just happens to be the same. Right? I mean, that's what you got to commit yourself to. It's got to be real. It's got to be real. It's got to be real. All of it is real. There's no way it could be fake because that's a conspiracy theory. That's a conspiracy theory meant to make us look stupid. It's a black hat op meant to make us look stupid. Essentially, when all the layers are peeled back, Romania's top court annulled an entire presidential election based on a TikTok social media campaign, which the intelligence services claimed, without providing concrete evidence, bore similarities to Russian tactics allegedly used elsewhere. It's hard to conclude that this was anything but an institutional coup d'etat, as Georgescu put it. Even the pro-EU candidate who lost to Georgescu said the decision crushes the very essence of democracy, voting. Yeah. The ruling sets a terrifying precedent. If vague accusations of foreign interference can nullify election results, any future electoral outcome that threatens entrenched elites could be similarly overturned. Unfortunately, what happened in Romania isn't an outlier. It is an escalation in an all too familiar trend now afflicting Western societies, whereby unpopular and delegitimized elites resort to increasingly brazen methods such as media manipulation, cognitive warfare, censorship, lawfare, economic pressure, and surveillance and intelligence operations to influence electoral outcomes and suppress challenges to the status quo. What is my last section here? It is no coincidence that these measures are employed most aggressively in those countries with particular strategic value for NATO. Romania is a case in point. The country has been instrumental in providing military aid to Ukraine. Additionally, it is at Romania's 86th Air Base where Ukrainian pilots receive training on F-16 fighter jets. The facility serves as a regional hub for NATO allies and partners. Now, hold on a second. Let's just see how much Romania is like South Korea. Does the United States control Romania's 86th Air Base? Dun, 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 dun. Does not control the base, but it has established a significant military presence there through cooperative agreements and joint exercises. The 86th Air Base, also known as Fiteshti or Borsia Air Base, is operated by the Romanian Air Force and is located blah, blah, blah. Modernization to NATO standards. In 2021, the U.S. deployed units to conduct joint exercises at the base. Following the invasion of Ukraine, U.S. F-35 aircraft were stationed at the base to support NATO operations. wait a second. I thought that those were the ones that Trump just said that Elon says continually are obsolete. And I believe that Trump just ordered the production of those stopped. Someone in the chat can check me. The base has hosted multiple rotations of U.S. fighter squadrons for enhanced air policing missions, indicating ongoing collaboration between U.S. and Romanian forces. In addition to hosting U.S. forces, the airbase is set to become a regional training hub for NATO pilots, including those from Ukraine. This initiative involves cooperation with several nations, including the Netherlands and Lockheed Martin. Is Lockheed Martin a nation? I mean, according to Arthur Jensen in the movie Network, yes. What about in a state of war or emergency? Can the U.S. then take control of the base? In a state of war or emergency, the United States could potentially increase its military presence and operational capabilities at Romania's 86th Air Base, but it would not automatically take control of the base. Depends on the agreements between the U.S. and Romanian governments, as well as NATO protocols. Okay, so let's return with more information now. Nice little dig there. Nice little quick dig. Brain Strain again, $10 on Rumble says a little bit of appreciation for you and your work. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brain Strain again. Oh, Lee Walden says, this is the balls. You're here with the peeps. Much appreciated, Chris. Well, I didn't know what it meant to say that this is the balls, but it sounds like a compliment. So I guess I'll take it as a compliment. And we'll assume you're referring to Christmas balls and not some testicles. Let's continue with this article. Hold for processing, pulling that back up. This facility serves as a regional hub for NATO allies and partners. Moreover, the Mikhail Kolgolniceanu Air Base on the Black Sea coast is undergoing significant development to become the largest NATO base in Europe. Huh. How about that? The expansion aims to support NATO operations and strengthen the alliance's presence in the Black Sea region and its control of Russia's near abroad. The Western alliance clearly can't afford to allow mere popular sovereignty to jeopardize Romania's role as a NATO garrison. No wonder then that the U.S. State Department supported the court decision on the grounds that, quote, Romanians must have confidence that their elections reflect the democratic will of the Romanian people, end of quote. It's also highly unlikely that the EU-NATO establishment wasn't involved in some way or another in the judicial coup against Georgescu. The measures employed to undermine Georgescu are indicative of a broader willingness to erode democratic norms in pursuit of geopolitical objectives. For the same reason, the same powers are attempting to foment a Ukraine-style violent overthrow of the government in Georgia, where the pro-peace ruling party recently won the elections. NATO's aggressive military posture isn't just destabilizing its official adversaries, but also its members, as well as those countries the alliance intends to draw into its sphere of influence. It's only a matter of time before the tactics deployed against frontline states are turned against any core NATO country in Western Europe that strays from the alliance's prescribed path. That scenario is likely just one wrong election away from becoming a reality. And I think that Thomas Fozzi in the pages of Compact Magazine is dead on. And that is a wonderful bit of information. I was not aware of the NATO-oriented significance of the near-term future in Romania. So they are desperately attempting to cling to Romania rather than allow the regime government and its uniparty to be kicked out, to be thwarted. They are clinging to power, as they are here, as they are everywhere else. The same story repeating once again. And we noted the other day that their situation was eminently similar to Venezuela's at the end of 2020. How they were just like, no, that election doesn't count. We're going to have our own. Our own election, that one does count. This one doesn't count. Same system in this case, not in that Venezuelan case, but same system here. One election counts, one election does not count. No explanation for why that is, but you just have to trust them, I suppose. So we are watching them attempt to take over Romania or, hold on to power in Romania because it is too important to their purposes in Romania. And let's look once again at the map of Eastern Europe that we looked at the other day. I think that this is the one. Hold for processing. Ah, darn. I meant to show while we are holding for processing here. No, let's finish this. Gosh, I'm so scatterbrained sometimes. Thinking, oh man, we can get to all these things. They all connect in such cool ways. I got to show these guys. Here is our map. Is this the map? Oh no, this is not the map at all. Hold again for processing. I pulled up the wrong map. You know what I'm just going to do? Let's just make sure that we're letting the machine give us the right answer always. I only want to work with the machine's answers. It is important to understand the value of presenting the machine in all its glory. Why would we? This is unbelievable. Google Maps has essentially just shit the bed on me. I don't even understand how that's possible. Isn't this supposed to be the Google, the leader in maps? Hey, do you want a map? Good thing we filmed everybody everywhere. Do you want to know what it looks like right above your bed right now? Check Google. Google for knowing exactly where everything is always. This is what happens when you want things to be just a little too correct. Okay, here we go. We're really doing it now. Now we have started at a world map. Going to get exactly what I want here. All right. So let's begin to zoom in on Eastern Europe here. Look how big Russia is, by the way. That is friggin' amazing. That is so big. Like, it could just swallow us up. Alaska too. It don't give a rat's ass how big we are. It's like, look how big we are. So big. Well, once we take Canada, who knows? Enormous landmass, anyhow. So we were talking about Ukraine the other day. I'm talking about what parts of Ukraine were gone. And it's like these ones for now on this eastern part. There is, by the way, this is Donetsk, Mariupol, Crimea, Kharkiv, Lugansk is over here. So all that's gone. And then we have Moldova. We have Romania here. So they are losing their NATO-ness and their global influence on Romania. They're not going to get their special base. I imagine Romania will just get to keep that for its own defense. And maybe they'll carve off a little chunk of Ukraine and Hungary and Poland and Belarus. And hey, maybe Moldova gets this, Why not? Look at that. Moldova, you're no longer landlocked by the regime. And I guess that they have this port, but this would be a much better situation for Moldova. Who gets Odessa? I think you got to think Russia, but who knows? If you're carving things up and you're worried about Romania not being on your side, you might think, oh, hey, if we get rid of the global regime in our country, we can get some of this other territory from the global regime's made up country of Ukraine. I feel like that's probably where things are headed. All right, I'm going to check the chat here. And Dave's like, basically making me the character in 2001: A Space Odyssey, saying, Perplexity, answer my question, and it responding, I can't do that, Chris. It actually does do that. It did that to me earlier today. Polymathanon, $10 says, cheers to you, moderator. Always a blast listening. Thank you. And thank you for your chiming in. Polymath says that the link to Mitch glitching is, oh, wow. Here's the video. So we got a Glitch McConnell happening today. Here he is. Good old Glitch.
Is your head okay after that fall? Senator? Are you good?
Is that really from today? Wasn't Thune behind him in the last one? And I mean, and I know because of his leadership position, he would be, but like, I feel like I remember Thune walking up and trying to save Mitch. I mean, did he come out early after the last fall? Gosh, that's wild, man. If that's today, that head bandage is ridiculous looking. Didn't he fall on his face? Man, I don't know. Are we sure that's today? Let me see if I can find this again. I want to see if some part of the machine will agree that that happened today. Did Mitch McConnell short circuit at a Senate podium again today? Yeah, I don't know if this is today, man. Is it today? I really want somebody to tell me. This says Mitch McConnell did not experience a short circuit at the Senate podium today, but he did have a notable incident earlier in the week. He fell while leaving a GOP luncheon at the Capitol, resulting in a sprained wrist and a minor cut to his face. He was pictured in a wheelchair yesterday. We were told it was a leaked picture of Mitch in a wheelchair. A leaked picture. So overboard and dramatic. Mitch isn't on the Hill today. No. Yeah, it doesn't seem. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that Polymath says I got bamboozled. Yeah, he says he got bamboozled. Yes, and now you have bamboozled me based on your reputation, and now we all look so stupid. That was a black hat op meant to make us look stupid to people who wore 2 masks in their car. God darn it. Oh, man. I can't imagine what life would be like if I cared about looking stupid to stupid people. It's got to be so difficult. And I did care about it at one point in my life. It was difficult. But I didn't realize those people were so stupid back then. And if I did, then it wouldn't have been hard at all. There's one more thing I want to play, and we'll wrap it up on this. I guess we started on the QAnon of it all, and then at some point in the middle, we hit Huma Abedin and Anthony Weiner, and we're going to come, in some sense, all the way full circle to the place where Huma Abedin and Anthony Weiner and QAnon all meet, and that is in this video.
You're asking the wrong guy. I am not on those.
I think the left is a lot more focused on what the quote-unquote Q conspiracy is than others. They're two different things. There's Q and there's anonymous.
No, you move your left hand from your right hand. I'm asking about QAnon.
There is no such thing putting them together. There's Q. Whatever. We don't have to spend time on this.
Right. QAnon is a bizarre conspiracy theory that Democrats are drinking the blood of kids or something like that. It's insane.
This Kash Patel is about to be the FBI director, so I don't think we should put him as some sort of fringe actor.
I don't even know where to start.
Well, start with your laptop, Anthony. Start with your laptop. What a mystery it all is, right? And Jon Stewart, the Daily Show host who came back this year and is now like supplying content that the super based and red pilled people love to share around. Look at what the normies are seeing. Some of it's all right. It's fine. It's just not like we shouldn't spend all our time doing these things. Jon Stewart and Anthony Weiner were friends. It's all so crazy. It's all so crazy. God, man, I have a tendency. I really kind of believe that Anthony Weiner's laptop and Hunter Biden's laptop and Nancy Pelosi's laptop have got to be similar in some way. And I think that they might all be under control. And it doesn't make them not villains, particularly Weiner and Pelosi, even more so than Hunter Biden. I mean, his personal failings are severe. The corruption and compromise is awful. But, you know, the person who should get the blame for that is his father, primarily. Gosh, Pelosi and Weiner are heinous individuals, as far as we know. I'd be shocked if we were wrong about either of those. But, you know, maybe the whole thing about Anthony Weiner and what did they call him? He had, was it Pierre? No, that was Mitt Romney, right? Pierre Delecto. Wasn't it like Juan Danger or something like that? What was Anthony Weiner's online nick? Carlos Danger, I think. Carlos Danger. Okay. So was that whole Carlos Danger thing and Anthony Weiner's laptop and all of the stuff that spun out of it? Was that an Anthony Weiner takedown attempt? Was that a cover story for Anthony Weiner flipping to make him look like he was the bad guy? He was the target. Who knows, man? There's lots left to learn. I'm excited. I guess one day we'll find out some of the answers. Yeah, Pierre Delecto was Romney. Yes. All right, guys, with that, I guess we will wrap it up today. I probably said so many terrible things that could get me in so much trouble. But one thing no one can deny is that there was not 1 ounce of defamation in there. And with that, I will be back tomorrow at the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic. And Joe Biden will never be president.
Well, what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
Ah!
And what's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
You down. We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What must be what?
In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.